What do you think Luxray would look like with a completely random regional variant? Or how about Nidoking? Well, we are going to be finding out in this video, where I'm going to be giving completely random Pokemon completely random regional variants. I have gone ahead and generated some random Pokemon, and then a random type combination to go alongside them to base their regional form on. I did this a bunch of times, I picked out the best ones, and now we're going to make actual designs out of them with the help of my guy RGreywind, who drew the artwork. And as always, links to check him out are in the description below. With explanations out of the way though, we are going to go ahead and get things started with Cacnea. As mentioned, Cacnea was determined completely randomly for this, but I ended up picking it for the video because of the random type that was generated along with it, and that was the pure Ghost type. Ghost felt like a really natural fit for Cacnea, and something that could actually make a great regional variant out of it even though it's random. So I thought it would be a fun Pokemon to explore, and this is what it looks like. Now, while the Pokemon and typing are randomly determined here as mentioned, the design was a little more calculated, because we naturally wanted to give it the best design possible. With Cacnea being a cactus, and the Ghost type obviously being the theme here, the idea for this variant was to make it more like a pumpkin, which you can see in a few different places in its design. With that being said though, it's obviously primarily white in color, and this was done as a way to sort of blend this pumpkin idea a little bit more with the Ghost type itself, because ghosts are often white themselves obviously, and pumpkins as well as other gourds can be white too. So to me, it felt like a neat and creative blend that helped the design come together while also helping to set itself apart from another certain pumpkin Pokemon that is also a Ghost type. So at the end of the day, even though this design was kind of randomly determined, Cacnea, in my opinion, is honestly a perfect fit with the Ghost type. And personally, I love how this design turned out in order to show that. It is just one of many designs that I have to show you today, however, because now we are going to take a look at one of the Pokemon I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and that is Nidoking. I did also mention Luxray as well, so be sure to keep watching for that, but Nidoking is yet another Pokemon that was randomly determined for this video. Nidoking is an awesome Pokemon, so right away I thought this could be cool, and then when I generated a type to go with it, I was basically sold right away, because that type was Ice. We all know what the Ice type has done for other regional variants, and I felt with Nidoking it could be no exception. So without further ado, here is what an Ice type Nidoking could look like. If you had to put it into words, I would say that the overall theme of this design is Yeti Kaiju, which honestly is just an amazing combination. As an Ice type, Nidoking has naturally adapted by growing fur, which it did not have before. That is where the Yeti part of Yeti Kaiju comes in, and personally I just love the idea of blending those two concepts, because a Yeti is not only all about ice and snow, but it in and of itself is kinda like a Kaiju already, so it maintains what Nidoking is doing as a Kaiju based Pokemon. It applies the Ice type to it in a really natural way thanks to the Yeti's wintry connections, and then it creates a really interesting blend of two cool creatures that ends up looking just about as cool as you'd think it would. Also, if you were to take this general concept back to its first stage as a Nidoran, it would also work perfectly as well, because Nidoran is largely based on a rabbit, so as an Ice type, it could become an Arctic hare, and with its own wintry connections and white fluffy fur, it would set the stage perfectly to later evolve into this Nidoking. With Nidoking also being one of the very few Pokemon left who has not gotten any kind of special form to this point, I think something like this would be the perfect thing to do that would definitely make its time to shine worth the wait. Moving along to our next Pokemon, we have Flygon, and I knew immediately that I was going to have to include Flygon in this regardless of the typing, because Flygon has been overlooked for some special treatment for far too long at this point, and simply put, it deserves some justice. When generating the typing for it, however, we looked out a little bit and didn't get anything too weird, because we ended up with Psychic Rock. I felt like this had a good blend of unique and cool, yet not too far out or weird, so I thought that we would be able to actually make a cool design out of it, and I feel like that is exactly what we were able to do. While the lore is a little bit shaky on how this particular form would actually be able to happen, I feel like Flygon pulls off the typing quite well. Its wings and pretty much its whole body become infused with psychic energy, and honestly, the rock type isn't that far off from the ground type that it already has, so maybe you could say that this is what happens to Flygon when it becomes enlightened after spending all of that time in the desert and then eventually making it out, or something like that. I feel like it would be worth it to just pull some kind of explanation like this out of thin air if it meant that you got to have a design like this. And I also feel like Game Freak could come up with something pretty solid. Overall though, I feel like this is the kind of design that Flygon deserves after being disrespected and forgotten about all this time, and I honestly hope it gets a new form like this sooner rather than later. Alright, now it is finally time. I mentioned Luxray at the beginning of this video, so now it is finally time to see how it could look with a random regional variant of its own. I thought Luxray would be a cool Pokemon to work on with this, and so really it all came down to the typing that we would end up applying to it. And it ended up being cool while also being a little bit out there at the same time, because the type that we ended up with for Luxray was Dragon Normal. Now, on its own, this type combo isn't anything too crazy, but when placed on a Pokemon like Luxray, it obviously becomes a bit more out there. However, at the same time, putting the Dragon type on a Pokemon like Luxray sounds like a recipe for success if I've ever heard one, so I knew that this one was one that I had to do. And this is what it came out looking like. The goal here was basically to just try and make it as dragon-like and normal-like as possible, while obviously maintaining the cat features that make Luxray, Luxray. So one natural point of emphasis with this ended up being its tail, because making the tail more draconic felt like a good way of adding some more dragon flair in as natural of a way as possible that didn't really break Luxray's base design. A more draconic mouth was also an idea I had for the same reasons, and then from there the design just kinda came together. For whatever reason, maybe because of the normal type, I also kind of had this vision before we even started on the design of it having this whitish cream color as a part of the design. And even if that is pretty vanilla as far as how to represent the normal type goes, I do kind of feel like it is the thing here that really pulls it all together and makes this design look different and striking and unique and interesting, but also still like Luxray despite the vast differences with this variant. Overall, I do feel like it came together pretty well, and this was honestly a really cool kind of experiment to do for a video. But what do you guys think? Which of these designs is your favorite, and did you like this concept in general? I think it would be fun to do a part 2, so be sure to leave a like and comment down below if you enjoyed the video to help potentially make that happen. I will be back with another video as well too, so be sure to subscribe as well for that, and until then, as always, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.